Good afternoon and welcome to the latest Ivors Academy Youth Network Presents webinar. I'm really delighted to be able to continue our series of creative conversations and have the opportunity to feature members of our newly established Ivors Academy Youth Network Council. I firstly just want to apologise for the late start of this webinar. We've had some technical difficulties this afternoon, and unfortunately Kizzy Crawford has had an emergency this afternoon too, so is unable to join us. So I hope you bear with us if there are future technical problems this afternoon, various things to do with internet connections. As the title suggests, this webinar session is a relaxed and informal conversation between creators, revealing insights into the creative talents of our Youth Network Council members and highlighting key music industry issues which they are passionate about. The conversation this afternoon is, of course, an introduction to our newly appointed jazz composer representatives, Rosie Frater-Taylor, Sahra Gure. Together with other Youth Council colleagues, they are our direct link right to the top of the Ivors Academy for our young creator community in the UK. In the host chair this afternoon is Ivors Academy Director and Chair of the Jazz Committee, Orphy MBE. Orphy Robinson joined BASCA in 2015 and was elected to the Jazz Committee as a member in 2017. 2017 also saw Orphy appointed as a board director, and then he was chosen to chair the Ivors Academy Jazz Committee later this year in March. Orphy Robinson is an award-winning multi-instrumentalist specialising in tune percussion and one of the few UK musicians who have been signed to the legendary jazz label Blue Note Records. Orphy's career spans more than 40 years and he has featured in over 100 recordings. He is consistently invited to perform and to collaborate with internationally acclaimed artists such as Nigel Kennedy, Carleen Anderson, Joss Stone, Robert Plant, Courtney Pine, and the late great Hughie Masekela. But enough about him. I'm delighted to welcome our guests this afternoon, Rosie Frater-Taylor and Sahra Gure, and of course, Orphy Robinson. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, hello there.
Give me a sec.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure for me because both of you I've sort of worked with and communicated with in all different sort of ways. Rosie in particular in the last sort of year or so. And then obviously Sahra for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. It's fantastic to see you both achieving so much and joining the Ivors Academy as well. How has it been so far since you've joined the Youth Council?
Do you want to go first or shall I?
You go ahead.
It's been really interesting so far. Like we've only really just started. But I think we all have sort of different ideas of things we really want to fix about the music industry, like whether that's just, you know, from our own personal experience, or whether it's things we see affecting other people as well. So I mean, at least that's me personally. So I mean, it's all sort of like we're still sort of waiting to really get into it, but it's a really cool organisation to be associated with. Like so many legends and so many of my inspirations like have been recognised by the Ivors. So yeah, it's cool.
Good. And Sahra?
Yeah, I think similarly, I think it's like me and Wesley have spoken about it a lot, that it's a new concept. So I guess it's what you make it. I guess that's quite, it's interesting to see what it will become. It's still really early days, but I think it's nice that our voices are going to be hopefully be heard, and we've got an opportunity to change things, I guess, from the inside, as opposed to sort of going around knocking on doors. So that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the history of the Ivors is one of championing many causes and also fighting for the rights of composers. When you were studying, which I think, Rosie, you're nearly finished studying, and obviously, Sahra, you have. Did they, on the courses, did they make you familiar with these sort of issues that musicians are facing outside of the colleges, but also that things like the Ivors existed?
No.
No.
To be
I
honest.
mean, yeah, there's like very little kind of preparation for kind of like what one might expect, you know, trying to become, whether it's like trying to be a jazz instrumentalist or trying to be an artist in the industry. And I mean, I don't know about you, Sahra.
I think, yeah, the way I've come to terms with it is that I think jazz school or conservatoire, they don't see their job as turning you into an alone standing musician. Like that their job is to give you like certain tools within music. It's all based around playing and being a great player, but that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, being your own musician and making your own music and distributing and all these things that come with sort of industry. So I think it's nice to find like a middle. Hopefully this is a way of sort of, you know, finding a middle ground of that, I guess, the other part. I don't know. I feel we might have lost Orphy.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I thought that the conservatoires, especially the universities, have got better than that. Better at, you know, giving that sort of music business background.
I think it's starting to change, to be honest with you. I know that I went to Trinity. I know that they're starting up a performance course, a like industry course.
Yes.
So I think naturally by having that course, it will seep into other parts of other courses and training and things like that. But there isn't anything really set on industry, and if it is, then it's kind of like voluntary and people don't go, or do you know what I mean? It's kind of
it's so important because, you know, you guys have got your places on these courses because of your incredible talent. You know, one would argue that there's not a lot they can teach you, really. They can nurture your talent, but I mean, it's the music business side of things which really can transform your creativity into something that's a viable career.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, I guess like the thing about jazz as well is it's sort of quite, well, at least because I'm at the academy, it's like it's a very niche kind of jazz that they teach there, and I've sort of like found myself being slightly like opposed to quite a lot of it, but it's sort of like I don't know, that there's no one's encouraging you to become like the next like globally renowned pop artist. But I guess that's maybe part of what I kind of want to do. I don't know. Well, who knows? But it's like, I guess it's difficult in jazz to kind of I don't know, like to even teach how to be a successful jazz musician.
Right.
Yeah, well, at least at the academy is my experience.
And would you think that you're learning these sorts of skills through your peers, your peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, or working with other artists and learning from them, their experiences as well?
Not really. Like it's mostly, so I've done a lot of work with Nijo, and they've like hooked me up with some like one-to-one lessons with like an industry specialist guy. Also my parents are musicians, so they've kind of taught me a lot, and my manager as well is like really kind of, he's really helping me understand like the strategy and the approach to the industry.
Absolutely. If I could just stop the conversation there just very briefly and pause, and just to tell our audience that I want to let you know that there is a Q&A section at the end of this this conversation discussion, and so I would encourage you all who are watching and listening to send in your questions for Rosie, Sahra and Orphy. I know Orphy is going through a few technical problems as we speak at the moment, so use the Q&A function on your web screens and send through those questions for all three of our guests this afternoon, and we'll discuss that and then hopefully answer those later on. Now I think we have Orphy back.
Yes, hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask was, let's go back. When did you know? It's a question I always ask students, a lot of things, that are going on to, you know, hopefully to have careers in the music
industry.
area. When did you know that this thing, or, you know, was there a moment when it just became clear this is me, or was you just kind of like doing stuff and then it kind of all of a sudden you were, you know, I better take this seriously? I mean, for me, it was a case of wow. I think it was being asked to play on a session, and that session went to #2 in the pop charts, and at the time, and I thought I might have to take this seriously. I remember, I remember saying to my parents, to my dad, I think I'm going to do music, and he was like, but that's been obvious for ages. We don't know what you've been mucking about for. That's the thing that you do, you know. So it was that significant moment. So for yourself, sorry, who's going to go first? Sahra?
I don't. I still. I'm still sometimes. Like, am I doing this? I don't think it's quite sure just yet, to be honest with you. As much as I just, as soon as I don't enjoy it, maybe it's not what I want to do, but I just really enjoy it. And I think, I've never really had a plan, so I don't know in that sense. I've never like putting out music. I didn't put out music because I thought now I should put out music. It was kind of, I had music. It was, I'd record, you know what I mean? It felt very easy, and then suddenly it was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice. Do you know what I mean? But it might change. You never know.
For me,
Rosie?
Probably since, I mean, maybe the opposite of Sahra, like probably since I was about 6 and I like picked up a guitar and I was like strumming it, and I was like, apparently I was like, oh, it doesn't sound very good, but like, why don't I try singing? And then, so probably ever since that point, I've kind of like, well, as I say, I've always had music around. I'm in that incredibly fortunate position. And so it's like, I haven't really throughout school or throughout my life found anything I deeply connect to quite as much as I do music. So yeah, I don't really see myself ever doing anything else, to be honest, so whatever it takes.
Can I ask, but surely, I don't know, the way I'm thinking is that you would have got some really, really good and positive feedback from not only your family, but other friends, randoms, saying that your music making is exceptional, it's really, really great, and surely that was an inspiration as well. I don't know. Yeah,
well, I mean, I've always sort of not to sort of float my own boat, but I've always sort of been a bit of a kind of guitar, like picking it up incredibly quickly, like it coming to me very naturally. And so I guess, like I guess as a kid, you always want people to praise you, and that always like encourages you and that you do something well. And so I mean, I guess my route did come through like guitar playing. I was like solely an instrumentalist for a couple of years. But then it's only like recently that maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, that I've really kind of started to try songwriting and take that more seriously, and apply that. Yeah, I guess, because, well, I'm going on a bit now, but like Becca Stevens is a big influence for me, and I saw her for the first time 6 years ago, so sort of coincided with that, I guess. Oh, Orphy, you're muted.
You're muted, Orphy.
Sorry about that technology. Yeah, so the influences of writing, it's good that you know, sort of like Becca Stevens. Have you kind of looked at, you know, outside of writing on your own, what is it like writing with other people, composing with other people? Does that kind of, I want to know if that breaks up your own personality, character, or does it bring it out more, or do you morph into the mask, I call it, where you do this thing desperately, you know, and you argue, no, I think that's a chorus, no, I think that's a bridge, you know, did you have that sort of thing? How is that relationship?
Well, for me, I find it incredibly difficult. I sort of like, part of my whole like sound, I think is very much rooted in me doing a lot of it myself, like the producing side of it, the recording side of it, and it's maybe an approach if I collaborated with someone I wouldn't necessarily achieve, but I think that's also a bit of stubbornness as well, because it's something that's like that I'm definitely more open to for my future projects. And like for my next album, I've collaborated with so there's a producer called Connor Albert, and then he's like, we worked on a couple of tunes together, and also a piano player called Chris Hyson, and we wrote a tune together. So gradually, like, it's a slow process, but yeah, in how does it change it? I guess it's like, so for example with Chris, it's like I normally go for a very layered sound when I'm writing, like layer upon layer upon layer. It becomes quite thick, but Chris kind of, the song we wrote together was very like 3 parts, so guitar, vocals, piano, and a few backing vocal bits. So it's just different approaches, I guess. Yeah.
You're muted, Orphy.
You're muted again.
And Sahra,
Hey.
Yeah.
I write in all sorts of variations. I write for other people. I write for myself. I write. People sometimes send me tunes, and I write songs for, like, I put words to it, or it's always different. And much like Rosie, when it came to my own stuff, originally I was a bit sort of wanting to do it all myself, but I found actually that there was like, you don't always know what you like until you try other things. So it's like the more other stuff I did, I was like, oh, not only was it like there's other work, you know, other ways of making income, but there's also like other sounds. And it's like, oh, I want to incorporate this sound, or like, oh, when I work with certain people, like you said, they'll hear something, that's a chorus. For me, that was a verse, or, you know, just it's fun also to see, because we didn't learn songwriting at uni, or I didn't, you know, so it's nice to see how other people approach it. So to be in that sort of like group scenario more and more actually is helping me to expand my own approach, I guess. It's always changing, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. Ask me in a year, I'll be like, no, I only want to do everything on my own.
Well, so I mean, let's go back. What was music like, for instance, say at school? Did you do stuff outside it, or are you more sort of learning music from the school sort of system? So Rosie, obviously, you know, there is that thing of the parents as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, so my dad essentially produced and helped me mix my first album. So that was when I was in 6th form. So, and I mean, like A-level music, GCSE music, it's like hardly the most inspiring kind of environment to be in. It's not really like, oh, you know, this is, you know, you can create amazing songs. It's more like, oh, let's analyze this bar of Weyburn. So yeah, I mean, in terms of inspiration, like for my career, it definitely came from my parents a lot, because they're really into world music and folk and stuff, and that is a bit of my vibe. But also I did Niger. I've been involved with them for ages, and that's how we know each other, obviously. And also I did like Junior Academy. So I've been through kind of a lot of those sort of things, like when I was really into jazz. That tends to be the case with jazz musicians. It's like we're really into jazz and like standards and improvising and like left field stuff, and then it's kind of becomes a bit of an aversion, at least for me. And at least I take all of that on board when I'm writing now. But yeah.
Okay. Sahra?
Yeah, I had a very supportive mother who I learnt the violin. I did classical violin for a long time, which I quickly abandoned when I realised singing was fun. And I just wanted to have fun. And I did a organisation called Albury Young Musicians, which is where I met Cleveland, actually, which is how I met you, Orphy, which I did when I was about 14, 15. I didn't sing before then, so I sort of came to singing through that. And their whole approach was amazing, because it basically was, they got working musicians in, and they'd do like a course. So there'd be like a course in Indian music, there'd be a course in Afrobeat, there'd be a course in Cuban music, there'd be like a free jazz course, I don't know, classical course, whatever. Like it wasn't genre specific, which I think was amazing for me. So my like singing upbringing isn't in a genre. I wasn't like, I didn't love jazz and wanted to be a jazz singer. It was kind of like, I liked singing. There was all these different genres, did a bit of everything. And then jazz was the only thing I thought was the only thing I could study. And I liked jazz, but I wasn't really obsessed, to be honest. Like I didn't love it that much. So I feel like for me, it's always been like different genres. I like music. I love music, but the genre thing has been an ongoing problem for me. I'm forever battling. But yeah, I think mentors, to like, the quick answer is mentors. I have had Dele, I've had you, I've had Orphy, I've had lots of different musical mentors, more than like teachers, I'd say.
So, I mean, with this kind of, let's describe it as a genre fluid.
Yeah.
Fluid, which both of you I get from, and I find that a really refreshing approach to what you do. And also because I suppose the word jazz is like an umbrella can be an umbrella for a lot of different things. One person's jazz is another person's something else, and it tends to move around, and that's where the kind of the freshness and originality can feed into what you do. If you look out there now, what artist do you think kind of sums that up? That kind of genre fluid, bit of this, bit of that. Are there any artists that you know you can tell us about and why they appeal to you? Or
well, for me, there's three, maybe four. Oh, well, I'll go for three at the minute. But Becca Stevens, who I said earlier, for anyone who doesn't know her, I mean, you should check her out. She's like definitely like folk, jazz, and even like as her sound has developed over the years, like she has a solely acoustic album called Weightless, which is very folky out there, but now she's sort of gone into the pop end a little bit more, and like slightly more electronic. She's one of those people who kind of, every album is different. So yeah, her. And for me at the minute, Jordan Rakai as well is another one. Like incredible voice, incredible groove, but also incredibly like intricate jazzy harmonies. It's like obviously a big influence for him. And I guess if we're talking maybe more jazz, like George Benson, I think, well, personally for me, he's probably my biggest guitar influence. And he's like, on a very basic level, I mean, he's done the jazz thing, he's done the standards albums, he's been like the instrumentalist for other people, but he's also done the 80s pop thing, and the obviously like breezing and everything. And that's kind of like an amazing combination of his like scatting and soloing and also these really catchy tunes. So yeah.
And Sahra?
I love Bilal, is one of my sort of like favorite in terms of like, he's my idol. I love Bilal because he's just an incredible jazz artist, but he like makes proper like R&B as well. And like, do you know what I mean? He's just a wicked performer, and the way he switches up his music. I've been to a gig and watched him do the same set, and it all just be like rock and metal. Like it just was like crazy. And then I've gone again, and it's like just him and a bass. And you're just like, I love things like that. So he, for me, is like, stands out off the top of my mind as someone who does that.
Right. So one thing that I think people would be really interested in is if you have a kind of a system or way of writing, what comes sort of first, or is it a mixture? It could be melody comes first, or lyrics, an idea, a theme. You know, how do you work? Is there a set way or different ways? Rosie.
For me, it's like up till now, and I don't claim to be a complete songwriter. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely many more approaches. I mean, I'm kind of excited to adopt, and that is actually also something that comes with collaborating with other people. Like adopting other people's processes and seeing how they work is super interesting. God, I've already forgotten the question. What was it? It was songwriting process, right? Well, for me, it's mostly harmony and like quite guitaristic. So I basically, the whole way I understand music is through the guitar and my ear, I guess, but like predominantly like guitar. And there's some really like awesome ways you can get harmonies, and I find that melodies tend to almost write themselves when you kind of, or maybe that's just me, when you find like some nice voicings on guitar. So but recently I've been trying to start with melodies more so than harmony, just for some variety. But yeah.
You're muted, Orphy.
Yeah, and Sahra?
For me, it varies. I think I write on piano and I'm not a pianist, so I guess maybe that means that that I'm limited in that sense. So I guess that also explains as to why I like to write with other people sometimes. But words are quite big for me, I guess, because I don't necessarily have all the chops. But word and like, I'll pick a theme normally, or like, I think if I feel something, I'm drawn to the piano. So if I like I'm feeling a bit weird and I've got this, and then I sit down and it comes out, and then I'm kind of on my way. I guess it's mainly around words, I guess.
Right. I mean, I tend to think, back in the day, last century, the younger version of me, because I couldn't play piano very well, and my main instrument I tended to muck about on, I wasn't as focused. So I always wrote at the piano because I was limited, because it meant I could only go for the ideas. I couldn't go, and play around, which I could do on the other instruments. So I suppose there's a kind of weighing out what's best. I was really interested in, for instance, Sahra, I've seen you working and singing in other languages.
Yeah.
How is that when you're trying to bring across sort of ideas or feelings in a language that's not your first?
That's a good question. I think I always try and spend a really long time with people who speak the language, or whoever. For instance, if I'm working with Dele, he makes sure to write everything out for me. He explains the meaning. I mean, like singing in Yoruba, there's lots of spiritual meanings in it, and he spends a long time explaining that. I guess it's just trying your best to like have the knowledge, and I think naturally, if you know what you're saying and you know the feeling and you know the story, it's quite easy to communicate that, because it's the same as scatting, isn't it? You're just using syllables, but you're expressing something else, so as long as you know what you're trying to express, I think it's a really nice way actually to not get too bogged down with, I don't know, to think about the emotion as opposed to like the actual physical word, I guess.
Right, yes, that's true. Unspoken words. So, for instance, Rosie, I know that you do some wonderful scatting, and that kind of, how would you describe that journey of sound, and when you know that you started, middle and ending, when do you know where that story's going?
Whilst I'm scatting or whilst I'm improvising, or?
Oh, it's a bit of both.
Well, it's definitely like an ear thing for me. I think it's like following my ear, trying to make things super melodic, And I guess just being in the sort of jazz world for so long, like a lot of that kind of includes like quite traditional jazz vocabulary, even though I wouldn't really class my music as traditionally jazz in any way.
Right.
So I guess that is how I achieve that sound. I guess it's, yeah, I mean, I have a serious guitar face, which probably like indicates how like into it I get. So yeah, I guess it's, yeah.
I love that, because obviously that's something that we can all identify with.
Yeah, I mean, like sound as well is super important to me. Like as a guitarist, I think it's so important. It's like it's the first thing anyone hears, and in my experience, you can sort of get away with like playing anything as long as the instrument sounds good. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. So I know that you both record. You're both recording artists. Can you tell me something about the pathway to that, and how you are envisaging to progress yourself? So with Sahra, I know that you've recorded abroad. Can you tell us about that, maybe, and what you intend with that, and also the other things that I've heard you record and put out?
Yeah, for me, I never have a plan. I always just kind of do what I like, and then afterwards kind of suss out what I'm going to do with it, I guess. So yeah, I recorded a lot in Cuba, and I haven't actually put any of that out yet. I mean, I have it, but it's not finished, I guess, or not. I don't know. Sometimes I record something and I just put it to the side, and I'm like, when I'm ready to, I'm a bit hippy-bippy. I'm kind of when I feel like it's the right time. But yeah, I haven't done anything with that yet. But in terms of my own stuff, I'm always trying to just like abandon what was the last thing I did and just do something new.
Right.
I love loads, like again, the genre thing just always comes back to me. I try not to, I mean, I've been working a lot with Renelle, and we were talking about you actually yesterday about like trying really hard not to have my own sound too much, because like what is my sound, and my sound will forever change. So it's like doing one project and everyone being like, oh, that's really acoustic, and and then being like, oh well, now I'm gonna make drill you know, or now I'm gonna make rap, or now I'm gonna sing this, or you know, I mean, who knows? But do you know what I mean? They're all things I love. So it's like,
Love drill.
I'm
Drill
not
is
sure,
amazing.
yeah, I'm not sure what it is that will happen, but I think until you try different things, I'll never know. So I'm trying really hard to consciously do something different, I guess, or like put myself out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
Orphy, would it be a good moment to listen to some music?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Harry, could we have a track from Rosie, please?
Are you lonely? Are you blue? Can't you tell me something new? Are you weary at the thought of me? Can't you tell? I think I'm fading. I can't see through the rain. It hides your face from me.
and that was Better Days, I think, from Frater-Taylor. Thank you very much. And Tarek, if we could have the track from Sahra.
Wanted to share my love with you, live alone with you, but played a game with you. Shame I was untrue. Foolish young thoughts, leave me please. Free my mind with ease. Put this game to rest and love consistently. Growth is fed in many ways, and I'm growing despite of what they say. It's just in love, my mind's a mess, can't let it be. So don't judge me for who I was, love me for who I am. Let me hit, why won't you understand? I know it's a fool, it's true. Self-sabotage the few, the end is control.
A remix.
Yeah, I love what you're doing with all of the stops.
That's not in it. That's not
I'm
in it.
joking, I'm joking.
But my heart
It's
is
on my
so
new stuff, though.
Apologies, Sahra. Apologies.
That's all right.
The technology this afternoon has been quite a nightmare.
I was actually playing around with that.
I only want to share the love I receive.
Within your music, and that's a really good thing to aim for. There is the originality in playing in lots of different sort of things, and just knowing how they work, I suppose. You know, there is that thing of what was it? I remember when I was learning, I was told you can't just say you don't like that. You know, why don't you like that? What is it that disturbs you about that saxophone sound, or that, you know, and I suppose it was the kind of filtering things in and filtering things out. But I'd like to just touch on, there's obviously musicians now, like yourselves, and artists now have to consider a lot of different things when you release things. I know that, Sahra, you've self-released, and Rosie, are you going to self-release, or are you lining up something?
Yeah, so I self-released my last album, 2018. But for this one, I'm sort of, so I've recently got a manager who's sort of helping me strategize a bit with this release. So potentially we'll like end up pitching the whole album to a label at some point. But this first single that you just heard will be released by me.
Okay. But you released things before. What was that experience like? Did you find it sort of as you thought it would be, or lots of surprises, twists and turns and things being self-released?
Well, I mean, I was really poor at social media and self-promotion, like in 2018. I mean, I've only sort of just got to grips with how to promote yourself. And so, I mean, I was pretty young. I was like, I think I was 17 or 18, and even younger when I wrote most of the songs on it. So it was, for me, it was interesting because it was just like a collection of songs that weren't really intended to be released, but ended up kind of, I mixed them and mastered them, and they've sort of kind of given me a bit of a platform to where I am now, where I feel like I'm in the position to actually kind of properly release an album, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. And Sahra, to self-release, And in fact, what was the decision making behind that? Did you have a choice of putting stuff out on a label or working your own things out? What was the thinking?
Yeah, for me, I was really lucky. I went to uni with a lot of like the UK jazz scene, you know, people like Nabaya and Moses, people like that were like huge in helping me learn about self-releasing. And like they would like just use it as, because there were, you know, I could have gone with an independent label, but it's the same essentially as self-releasing, you know. So for me it was a really good learning opportunity to see like how long does it take to make vinyls, how long does it take, how much does it cost to mix, how much is it, you know. And you know, it was kind of like learning how to do everything so that you never have to be at the mercy of anyone else. And that doesn't mean that I won't eventually go with a label, or I might choose to stay, you never know, but I think it's a really good learning opportunity to self-release.
We're in a like super interesting time now, especially as artists, like where labels are sort of becoming to an extent irrelevant. I mean, as you said, Sahra, like if you have those connections and if you know the right people, like, I mean, I guess to an extent, if you can fund your project, I mean, there's so many other routes that, I mean, where you don't necessarily have to sign your life away for like 10 years. And I think artists are sort of kind of clinging on to that a little bit more. It's like, it's sort of feeling like there's a new way. And
yeah, I feel like funding has also become a label in itself. You know, like you can apply to PRS funding, you can apply to private funding. There's just so many other things you can do to get that lump sum to get you started, because that's essentially what people want, is the lump sum. And then you can choose, you know, we're in an amazing position, I would argue, because people always say the music industry is terrible, but I think we're in a brilliant position because you can, you know, and Renal was saying this as well, we were talking about you can go to a label and you can pitch an idea, and if they say no, you can still go and do it. Like you don't need anyone to actually do it. You can do it, and then you can say, look, this is what it did without you, and they can end up offering you way more, or you can, you know, you can get way more out of it. And I think it's brilliant that we can do that now. You know,
like this whole
numbers, what, you know, it might mean when you're, you know, we're 17 or whatever and we put out a song, we're not number one, but it means that when you're 30 and you're making music and you're in a really healthy space and you know your stuff, that then you're doing really well, you know. And I think that's way more important. We're really building careers now, as opposed to like, you know, quick this and that. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Leslie?
Oh.
I think we've lost you again, Orphy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing as well is you were right, both of you, and it's about taking control. And when we look back into, you know, the past of how artists were ripped off, essentially, which still goes on in a different way, but I think, and it's hard to, what's the word, accounting and everything, trying to find out where your music is going, where it's being played, and, you know, all those things. At the touch of an app, you can find out things, but then also it can disappear as well. There are, you know, strange things that happen. And there are many things like I was discussing Spotify with someone. No, not Spotify, Shazam. And this was to do with finding out where things are being played, whose music is this, whose music is that, and couldn't that be used as the, you know, sort of all the time, which was, you know, as in Shazam, you know, whatever, you use those tools to find out what a song is. Whereas in my time, you had the record shops and you had a guy behind the counter and people would come in and sing songs out of tune, and the person behind the counter had to be the Shazam and work out what the tune was. So, you know, there are different things as well. But merchandising, all the newer things, like using all the platforms, WhatsApp, and, you know, there are many different things out there. And I know that certain artists like Moses have created their own ecosystem. So they know exactly what they're doing to get gigs, to get people to the gigs, to sell merchandise, and all of that, making things set for that. Are they sort of things that you also take into consideration when you're now releasing and moving very differently? So how you operate with building your own mailing list? It's almost like mailing list, really, but online. Are these sort of things that you've thought about and kind of engage with more?
I think it's pretty, it feels very natural for people of our generation to kind of be very like naturally good at kind of technology and social media, and I guess it comes quite naturally to us because, well, for pretty much all of my adult life at least, I've sort of that's just been like a huge part of my life. So I mean, the idea of like building a website and building a mailing list and getting an Instagram following and getting Facebook likes and YouTube subscribers, yeah, it's all just part of what it means to be a sort of self-releasing artist. I guess we've never had to experience it any other way. Maybe Orphy, for you, you've obviously you've experienced like releasing music in a different way to us, but yeah.
Yeah. And Sahra?
Yeah, I think the really great thing that is around now is that we live in a kind of, if you can't do it, there's a guy who can, and he's really easy to find. So it's like, if I don't want to do my Instagram and I'm like, you know what, I don't want to spend all day on my phone promoting myself, I can give said person a tenner, or my mate even a tenner, and they'll run my Instagram, you know? Or I can ask, I don't know how to build a website, but oh look, my friend's housemate does, and he knows how to code. So I can give him 20 quid instead of paying, you know, and there's all these great things. It's amazing though, because it's actually, it's like, and I reckon that's probably the same as you guys back in the day, where you pay this guy, he drops your record off here. It's the same sort of thing. You're still using your direct community, and you're still using your mates, and it is still an in-house thing, but it's different, you know.
It's very true, because I can remember the barbershops were, for the Caribbean community, the barbershops were where people sold records. Yeah. So I can remember a barbershop in Dalston where, you know, all of a sudden the door would open, someone would come in and say, I've got these records to sell. And people say, well, you know, how does it go? And these are just regular guys who've been given, you know, a couple of quid to go and sell some records, and they'd have to start singing something. And if people thought they were rubbish, then they didn't sell anything. It's so cruel.
But essentially, it's still the same thing, isn't it? Because we still ask our mates to play it in the club. We ask this person. And I think at the end of the day, the more we realise, and Femi, my friend Femi says this all the time, we're like, oh, industry. If you create your own community and spend less time begging the industry to help you, you can do so much. You can do so, and I think that's where this whole UK jazz scene's done so well, because it's a genuine community. No one's trying really hard. They're all genuinely supporting each other. I think that's what works these days, and always kind of has. I know you guys maybe had it with the Warriors as well, where like when there's a community and you're genuine, it always tends to work out.
Yes, no, that's very true. You know, one thing I would like to ask, right at the beginning, what's sort of like the difference? And my question would be, what do you want to fix? If you had the power to fix something tomorrow within the industry, what would that be? Or would it be a series of things? So, you know, now we have the Broken Records campaign, which was set up by Tom Gray, also from the Ivors Academy. And that's been doing fantastic work, sort of asking questions of the industry and how we can have fair payment for composers as well. So, yeah, what are the things that you've noticed now sort of coming into the industry?
Streaming. I think streaming is like, the amount you get per stream is just ridiculous. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even really want to think about it. But, you know, especially now living in a world where we can't play, because that's where most people get our money, there needs to be some kind of switch up in terms of streaming, personally, I think.
And Rosie?
Well, the thing about streaming is that it's like such a complicated, dense, really difficult to comprehend issue that has like multiple various problems about it, that often, I don't know, that often isn't quite covered by just saying like the per stream rate. It's really interesting. I don't claim to even know that much about it, but like there's something to like very simple things to do with like so the streams that the money that you get from the streams of people streaming your music doesn't go fully to you, is like a very simple, a very basic idea, which I think is like, why is this still a thing? Why is my money going to Ed Sheeran? Like, so I think that the user-centric concept for streaming, which the Ivors I think are fighting for, and the MBE, yes. I think that's probably the next step, and also like I think just doing the research into like would people be willing to pay more, like higher monthly fees for their music? And you know, I feel like they probably would, like for access to basically every single piece of music ever, for a slightly higher monthly fee. I think the research needs to be done into that in order to potentially justify those changes, because it's like streaming is one of those things where it's a culture thing, and it's only going to get more ingrained into our culture. It's like it's difficult to oppose it. But yeah, streaming is my answer to you.
It's interesting that both of you have picked up on the streaming thing, and particularly with the user-centric idea as well, where it's a flat thing right across the board, so the composers do actually get a touch of fairness. And yes, I'm sure you're right. Most people would prefer if if I've come online on a streaming platform and I want to hear Rosie and Sahra, I would hope the money goes to you and not to some other rock. You know, it's a no-brainer, and so it's time to bring some fairness to this incredible thing as well. And it's good that on the Youth Council you'll be looking at all different aspects, hopefully, of these various things, and bringing forward some initiatives and ideas as well, and that will help keep that movement going as well. I would like to ask one more question. Advice, and it's like in a really short thing. Advice for young composers.
Me?
Yes, yeah, Rosie. Okay.
I think I have two little nuggets. I would say find your people is a big one, because like Sahra was talking about it, but community is really everything. And once you find those people who you're happy to socialize with and collaborate with, I mean, they're really going to be there for the rest of your life. And I mean, communities do form in the music industry because we are such socialites and, well, tend to be extroverted people. And the other thing I was going to say is don't wait for other people to make music, if you know what I mean. Find ways to become independent in your music making, whether that is like downloading GarageBand. I don't own an Apple Mac, so I don't really know, maybe it comes installed already, but learn how to play a bit of piano, learn how to play a bit of guitar, and just like write songs. Don't feel like you have to, in this day and age, necessarily get a whole team around you in order to do what you want to do.
Okay. So Wesley, would you like to read or one of the questions asked by people watching?
Yeah, I have a question here from Ben Bartlett. When you are putting together a song, what do you find the most fruitful? Hard grafting with a regular routine of creative work, or being prepared for random inspiration that might hit you at an unexpected moment?
That's a good question.
Sahra?
I think I don't do routine personally. As soon as I have to be somewhere at a certain time, I just like everything goes wrong and I don't do it. And I've tried to do the whole, like every night putting the book by my bed and writing my thoughts and blah blah blah. Doesn't work for me personally. I think try both, but for me, I'm a like inspiration hits and I'm off, and then it's when I want and how I want. But I think everyone's different. Try both.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you actually on that. I think like good songs come from their development. Like you can have an idea you're not necessarily happy with in the early stages, and maybe someone might abandon that idea, but I try to fully develop or at least like take to like demo stage any idea I come up with. So that's what works for me.
Cool. Thank you both for those questions, those answers. Orphy,
yeah,
want to answer that one as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because I immediately pictured Gregory Porter, who the vocalist who used to carry around a dictaphone, but I know obviously he's moved on to a mobile now. He's done well enough to buy a mobile now. But he was always jotting down ideas. You'd be speaking or a sentence would happen, something, and he was like, "Oh, one moment," and he'd be into his dictaphone thing, and that which is a great way of compiling different snatches, because obviously, there is that fun thing of you come up with a melody or something walking along the street, and then by the time you get home to the keyboard or whatever it is, it comes out as something really revolting because you've totally messed the thing up. So it was a way of capturing those things. And I think also the inspiration thing just sat, whenever it happens, it happens. So forcing it at times can be hard. But then if you're writing for a deadline, sometimes you've got to go for the deadline, I suppose. So, you have to do that. But it's whatever works. For instance, there's different styles. I can think of bass lines for days, and I should have been a bass player, really, because I can find a bass in any hole in the music. I can find a bass line. It's like, I've got a bass there. So maybe that was my calling, to but it all, it's all, as they say, however you arrive at, at the end is, it's good having that journey, and at least you're having ideas.
Yes. I've got another question from our producer, Tariq, for Rosie and Sahra. What drill songs are you listening to at the moment?
I got to work with Blanco the other day.
Mm-hmm.
He's I really love his music, so I'm listening to a lot of Blanco at the moment.
Okay.
That was a joke. I don't actually like drill that much. I think it's quite funny. Is that bad? I think it's quite funny.
It's a very jazz opinion, Rosie.
I just think the rhythms are so funny. I don't know. My boyfriend was showing me some drill tracks, and I was like, why are they doing that? But anyway, that's my my horrible jazzer, like up on my high horse opinion about it. So what do I know? But yeah.
and the question from myself actually, what other interests do you
for me,
have outside of music?
For me,
Yeah, for all three of you.
tennis. I love tennis.
Yeah.
I think sports are cool. Like going for a little run is very important every couple of days, because otherwise you start to like lock up and you don't even realize it. So yeah, like tennis. Also just coffee. Coffee is a great hobby. Like just go out for a coffee, a bit of cake, you know. Yeah, so coffee and cake and tennis.
Brilliant. Sahra?
I work a lot with kids. I like to do a lot of teaching, where anything to do with sort of like young children music. I love running. I've got a dog. I love being with my dog, walking with my dog. That's me, really.
Orphy?
Okay, so it used to be roller skating.
Roller skating! No, Orphy, I had an argument with someone the other day because I said, there's no way. I went to a roller disco and I said, there's no way. They were like, Orphy used to run clubs and stuff, or no?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Oh my God.
No, surely not.
I owned 500 roller skates at one stage. 500 roller skates. I even put on a massive roller skating thing from Glastonbury one year.
You need to start like a jazz festival that's like jazz and roller skates and jazz, or like some venue where like there's like a jazz band playing and everyone's on roller skates. I think that's a winning concept.
It because Renell obviously at one stage was one of the roller discos that around a band would play. Live band, and Renell did it once as well. So being close, but definitely jazz and Latin. And as Ed Puddick just put, roller jazz. I think that's
roller jazz, yeah, or jazz skates.
Fantastic. Oh,
brilliant idea. So I'm absolutely obsessed with all of that. But now I would say my my hobby since March, since the lockdown, my hobby's gardening.
oh, wonderful, wonderful.
It's great, you know, growing a bit of rosemary, sage, all of that sort of stuff. But then, you know, I mean, obviously food comes into it, but also just nice flowers.
Oh, you've turned into a robot
really
again.
Really chills you. Yeah. Oh.
Oh no.
Okay, Orphy.
What about you, Wesley?
For me, I'm with you there, Rosie, with the coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I could bore people to tears about coffee and beans and grinds. Coffee and cooking as well. Cooking. Tough cooking. But on that lovely note, unfortunately, I have to wrap things up this afternoon. It's been a wonderful time, an inspiring conversation from both Rosie, Sahra and Orphy. It's been fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. I would really love to thank Rosie, Sahra and Orphy for giving their time with us this afternoon. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and a huge thank you to, as always, goes to my Ivors Academy colleague, Tariq, for being the producer this afternoon. Many, many, many thanks, Tariq. Please join us again for our next Creators Conversation webinar event featuring the songwriters representatives of the Ivors Academy Youth Network Council, Emma McGrath, Sam Johnson, Joe DeRuta, and Molly Welford-Toner. This conversation session will be presented by our producer, Tariq, and hosted by Ivors Academy Director and Chair of the Songwriters Committee, Helene Lindvall, on Wednesday, the 23rd of September at 3 p.m. I hope to see you then. Okay, many thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.